The following are some of the key concepts to how we construct our game from the back. The point of these concepts is for us to access the available space on the field and also attract the opposition to certain areas of the field to then create space and a free player. We want to control how our game is developed as much as possible, and these concepts are just some of the ways we look to do that. We're first going to look at some of the movements that we have to create that space we talked about. As we first see goalkeepers in possession, our center backs are going to slide to the side and our outside backs follow accordingly to create good angles. If the opposition press high, this is a typical strategy where we're going to look to try to pull and create some more space. The first question is, if the pressing players follow our center backs, what space does that create for us? It's important that our goalkeepers demonstrate patience to allow some of these pressing movements to create space elsewhere up the field. And as you can see, our central mids would then drop into that space that's created if the front three press and the rest of the opposition do not follow. Now, what if the opposition midfield follow? And most good pressing teams will stay connected through the first couple lines. So again, our center backs drop, our outside backs drop accordingly. The front three from the opposition are going to press us, creating that 3v3. Our central midfield players now also drop to help support this, creating easier passing angles or shorter distances to try to help the goalkeeper make a good decision. And as you can see, the three midfielders are going to follow our midfielders. So again, man marking is pretty common. They follow it. And now we look at that space that's created between the midfield line and the back line. For me and for my experiences, this is the most common space that's created, especially when we play out. And what we typically are going to ask for our players to do is to be able to clip a ball into this space. Very different than playing long or not building, as some would say it is. We're looking to play into this gap as much as possible, purely because, one, we think it's not a 50-50. Two, because we've created a larger gap, the ball doesn't have to be as perfect. And all we're asking is for our players to clip a ball into that space so our 7, our 9, or 11 can come back and find it. Then obviously the role of the players underneath is very important to assist with that second ball or that knockdown when possible. And the next thing is what if they stand still and they don't press, which is completely fine. So the space is going to be in front, so we're able to play short. This is definitely one of the most common approaches to pressing our build-out. The coach has instructed his players to wait for the first pass to be made, and then from there they'll start their pressing. So again, we'll probably play a shorter pass, and then that whole cycle of decision-making that we just covered goes on again. That front three will then begin to process their press, and then we'll start to look at what space is created for that. The next thing we're going to look at is reading the press of the opposition. This, for me, is one of the biggest things we can help our center backs or our backline players to understand when it comes to successfully building our game from the back. So we ask them to read what the opposition are doing. First one we're going to look at is that the opposition are looking to press and force our game inside. So what typically happens is we're going to now create the third man to play the ball inside, knowing that we now can bounce it out. So our 2 is in the cover shadow of the pressing player, is the free player, and happens to be the third player, is a great way to be able to advance the game. And now if we look at, we have that space that's created in front of our 7. Because of their defender following our mid coming back to pick up the ball, we've now created a bigger gap between lines. So our 2 can dribble into that space, or 2 can play the 7 into that space. We've now created a bigger chunk of space in between the lines for us to access. The other strategy we often see is that they're going to press us to the wide space. They're going to force the game wide. So this is where some of the ideas of positional play become very important in our positioning of our 2. So we want our 2 to be high enough to where they can get the ball and bypass that first line of pressure, as we've seen here. And now, as we see, the opposition will shift to try to pinch it into that side, which is fine. So what we're looking for now, especially in this example, is we're going to be able to split as they try to take away the ball line and force it. Can we find that ball inside? Let's say the outside back doesn't take that ball or doesn't take the line away. The 7 can make that same vertical run in behind. But in this case, the 2 is able to find and penetrate into the 7. And now the 7 is able to find our third player. And again, we're able to then face forward. So as a result of that, again, we've created that space in between lines. The 2 is able to attract a little bit and pull that out. The opposition have overshifted or shifted over to compensate and to close down that space. So now our 10 is facing forward. We have multiple players now on the wide left space to be able to play into and create the 1v1s that we really want in our team, to be able to run at players and create those numerical superiorities. Here, the last bit that we're going to look at is just kind of focusing on the movement of our holding mid. We talk about, we want that player to move in opposite of the ball. Some other coaches would ask their holding mid to maybe flow a little bit more with the ball to create a short outlet. In this case, we're asking them to actually move away from the ball, because we're looking to get into that space on the opposite side. So this is where we want to access. So as you'll see, is the 6 just pulls away enough. And again, if we're able to then find that player with the pass, we can break that line of pressure there. So as you can see, we're able to find the 6, and now we're off into that space that we want to access. So 6 drives forward, and as you start to see this, we've now established 6 players possibly in between the lines. Again, this is a pretty aggressive approach. Maybe you send only 1 outside back and you can still maintain 5 players between the lines. But in this case, we're able now to get ourselves in a position where the 6 has the ball facing forward with overloading their back line in a superior positioning. Again, this is ideal for us, and this is why it's important that that player then drifts off away from the ball versus then coming to and actually killing the space for us to get out.